hold on. Can I hit it again?
It was stated that only 5
Can everybody
times
hear
we
that?
have declared war
Okay,
in our
go ahead.
history.
Everybody ready?
Get your shuffling done.
Get ready for Ron Paul.
It was stated that only 5 times we have declared war in our history. True. But who's going to stand here and say that men that died in Vietnam and in Korea weren't in a war?
Defend the Guard is one of the most important and exciting things happening in American politics today. Simply put, Defend the Guard legislation says that the states will refuse to allow the president to nationalize their Guard troops for overseas combat without an official declaration of war by the U.S. Congress.
It's not like hippies who are against war. It's badass combat vets who are telling you exactly why, short of a congressional declaration of war, you do not have the right to use the National Reserve. So, you know what I mean?
In other words, never again. Since Congress, of course, will always refuse to take responsibility for the wars they finance.
You tell that widow, or you tell that orphan, I'm sorry, son, but your father had to die because we didn't want to lose federal subsidies.
The PBS NewsHour came out and did a 15-minute segment on Defend the Guard last year. Everywhere they testify before state legislatures, the Pentagon races to send a 2-star general to try to intimidate the states into sticking with the status quo. You know what that means. It means that the Defend the Guard movement is hitting the war party right where it hurts.
Puts the brakes on before we wash headlong into some unnecessary war again.
Great nations do not fight endless wars.
It's just true. And now the majority view. These wars do not serve the national interest, only narrow special interests. And while the government can safely disregard public opinion on almost every issue, without the mass support of the right, they just can't do it.
If you really want to honor veterans, quit making them.
To save America, we've got to abandon the empire.
This is a very sound effort to bring back once again the constitutional responsibility of all of us.
The spell has been broken. Americans can be tough, but smart. Learn more at bringourtroopshome.us and defendtheguard.us.
That video gets me every time. You guys probably recognize the narrator on the video, Scott Horton, right? The great Scott Horton. Saw Dave Smith, maybe one of the great modern day libertarian thinkers. Jimmy Dore, Michael Malice, some of the great libertarian thinkers of our time. And these are people I'm honored to be able to call friends right now. And Ron Paul is, other than my dad, that's my guy. I got to speak to him yesterday. He's not doing well. His health is failing. So keep me in your prayers. My name is Dan McKnight. I can't tell you how excited I am to be here. I'm going to wander a little bit, and I hope that doesn't bother anybody. I have a little bit of ADD issue. I live a mile and a half from here, and this is the first time I've been able to speak publicly about Defend the Guard in my home state, because the Uniparty in Idaho is strong. And the Republican establishment hates resistance. And we have a history in Idaho of being fairly solid when it comes to anti-war and non-aggression until about 3 decades ago. And then we became an extension of the swamp. One of my heroes, you may recognize his name, Senator William Borah. He served as a senator from Idaho post-World War I. And was one of 17 senators to oppose the Treaty of Versailles and the entry of the United States into the League of Nations. He said it would have beholden America to Europe's conflicts, and we would have to answer the call to go to war in Europe anytime that Romania had a conflict. Anytime. He's not wrong. And so he said to be friends with everybody, but to have no entangled alliances. And if we had a Mount Rushmore in Idaho, I think William Borah's face, for that simple reason, would be on it. Yeah, he was a philanderer. He had girlfriends in D.C. He was a dapper dresser. But you know what? He lived his life. He wanted to be left alone. I think in today's world, he would probably be a Republican if he lived in Idaho. because you have to be a Republican to be an influence in Idaho, unfortunately, at this point. But he was probably a pioneer of the libertarian mindset. He believed in non-aggression. Fast forward 40 years, other side of the aisle, Democrat. Senator Frank Church. We've all heard of him. Federal government took away all of our land and named it after him. That's kind of an insult to us. But Frank Church rose to seniority in the Senate, ran for president, but when he was in the Senate, he became the chairman of the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations. Second or third most powerful man in foreign relations in America. And he used his position to advocate for the end of Vietnam from Idaho. We were punching way above our weight class, the small state of Idaho. I don't have a lot in common with the Democratic Party, but Frank Church is on my Mount Rushmore too. That's 2 senators, 1 Republican, 1 Democrat. Coincidentally, they both served as chairman of the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations. Both of them did. Fast forward another 35, 40 years, and we have a governor that goes back to DC to go work for one of the most evil men ever, George W. Bush. And he vacates the governor's seat, and Lieutenant Governor Jim Risch gets promoted, appointed governor. This happened in 2005 when I was in Afghanistan. I was there as a member of the Idaho Army National Guard. We've been attached to the 82nd Airborne Division and the 10th Mountain Division. And nobody wanted the National Guard there. Active duty hated the National Guard. They thought we were weekend warriors, poorly trained, fat, out of shape, no discipline. But I served in the Marine Corps, Active Duty Army, and the National Guard. And I'll tell you that my time in the National Guard, we were the best equipped, best trained, most professional unit I ever served with. Because every time we put the uniform on, once a month for 3 or 4 days, and twice for 2 weeks in the summer, it was for one purpose, to train. When I was on active duty in the other branches, every time we put the uniform on, it was to show up for a formation, to go to a briefing, to go to a training on inclusion and diversity and political correctness. And then once a month or so, or once every other month, we'd go out and do some training and shoot guns. So I saw the active duty military as a giant waste of federal funds. And I hate to use that word because there's no such thing. What's federal funds? Confiscated tax money, right? And what is taxation? Thank you. So Jim Risch, he was the governor, and I'm in Afghanistan. And my men that worked for me, I had 13 men, 7 from Wisconsin, and the rest were from Idaho. And I use men as a generic term. I had 3 females work for me. I had 13 soldiers, let me be correct. And we had uniforms that were wearing out, boots that were worn out. We couldn't get gloves and goggles and body armor, things you need to execute a war. And I went through the chain of command all the way up to my brigade commander. And nobody could help us because we were the National Guard. Active duty wouldn't help us because we weren't under their budget. And so I got pissed. And if you know anything about me, I'm like a bloodhound. When I get on the scent, I'm going to figure it out. And so I called a friend of mine back home who was a fantastic liberty activist. He used to be a state party chairman for the Ron Paul presidential campaign. And I asked him for a phone number for the governor. And he goes, "Oh, Dan, I've got a cell phone number." Hell yeah. So I got a satellite phone. I climbed to the top of a mountain deep in the Pesh River Valley in northeastern Afghanistan, right on the Pakistan border. Active war going on around me. And I got a very clear signal on that satellite phone. And I called Jim Risch, who was the governor. And he answered his phone, and I said, "Governor Risch, this is Sergeant Dan McKnight. I'm a member of the Idaho Army National Guard. I'm in Afghanistan. I hope I have your attention. Dan, what do you need? What can I do for you?" And I told him our situation. And I said, "You're the commander-in-chief of the Idaho Army National Guard. You have men and women in danger that can't get basic supplies. I need you to do something about it." And I'll never forget the conversation. He goes, "Dan, I was just appointed governor about a minute ago. You've been in office for a couple weeks." And he goes, "But I understand the Constitution. I know my role. I know the enumerated powers. I'm the commander-in-chief. I'm going to do something. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to do something." And I thought, God, politics is easy, right? Hung up the phone, walked back down to my base. And a week later, my battalion commander, Colonel Collier Lipple, calls me on the landline there. And he goes, "Sergeant McKnight, I don't know what you did. I don't know who you called, but we have a container coming from Idaho with all the supplies that we need. Give me your goddamn phone." He took away my satellite phone. And so I held Jim Risch up on this pedestal. Lesson number 1 for today: never put a politician on a pedestal. They don't deserve it. They understand two languages, pleasure and pain. When you put them on a pedestal, that's pleasure. I'm not here to flate any politician. I put him on this pedestal. I held him there. This is Jim Rich. He's our guy. He did what we needed to do. And so anyway, I come home. The rest of the war, I start to see the fraud, waste, and abuse of the military. I couldn't figure out what the mission was. I didn't know what we were doing. There was no clear definition of success, of victory. The rules of engagement were confusing. Every time we flew on a mission in the helicopters, we had someone from the State Department in a three-piece suit sitting next to us telling us what property we could and couldn't fly over. Those are warlords that we support. Those are warlords we don't support. Shoot them. And so I could never figure out the mission, and we did different strategies. We did counterinsurgency. We did hearts and minds, shock and awe, provincial reconstruction. These are strategies that changed the scope of the mission. Everything we would do from the moment we woke up. And when I left, I was like, you know what? This is dumb. I got injured. I came home. I got surgery 3 times on my right shoulder and my rotator cuff and my bicep tendon. And the VA was difficult to work with. The National Guard didn't want to really provide any help or support. And so we agreed to part ways, right? That's what they say when you get separated. We agreed to part ways. And I went underground, angry, mad. I lost my home. Went through a divorce. Children stopped talking to me. I couldn't hold a job. I owned a business when I left and got deployed, a successful mortgage business. And when I came home, what happened in 2007, if anybody remembers, a little bit of a real estate crash. So when I came home, my mortgage business was worth nothing. And I had, I had a little bit of money saved up. And I bought a chain of retirement homes that had been boarded up and closed. And I thought, this will keep me busy. I'll be able to focus on providing service to people. I love people. I hate bureaucracy. And so I remodeled them. I tore them down to the studs, and I gutted them, and I remodeled them. I did every bit of work myself so I could bury my mind into something other than what I'd just gone through. And I opened these buildings up. In the 4th building that I opened, we made it a veterans home for veterans with dementia and mental problems. And the grand opening was awesome. Raul Labrador shows up. He's running for Congress. I'm like, man, we're making a move. We're getting important people here. This is awesome. The governor showed up. The mayor showed up. The building was packed with all these important people. I didn't have a single veteran there at the grand opening, though. Not one. It was all politicians that wanted their picture because they support the troops. And I hate air quotes. I apologize for that. Except for when Mini-Me does it in Austin Powers, right? And so we're cutting the ribbon, and I've got a big screen TV on the wall behind me like this one, and it's playing C-SPAN because I'm a bit of a nerd. I like to know what's going on. It's playing C-SPAN while all this is going on, and I turn and look, and Barack Obama is signing the Affordable Care Act. I'm like, what the hell is that? What does that mean to me? And my accountant's standing next to me, and I go, hey, do I need to know anything about this? Because we get Medicaid reimbursement for opening these homes. And he goes, we'll deal with it tomorrow. 2.5 years later, I was bankrupt. I didn't get a single reimbursement from the federal government for any of my homes after the Affordable Care Act passed. I'd been caring for 74 elderly folks with dementia, with other health problems at the end of their life, providing hospice care, meals, med management, all this stuff, just loving people, never got reimbursed. So I was broke. Now I'd gone to war. I'd been confused. I'd come home and pick myself back up, and the government had beat me down again. I just want to be left alone, which is that's the battle cry of every libertarian, right? I just want to be left alone. And I met my wife, my current wife, wonderful lady, incredible. And we got married, and we went on a honeymoon, and a friend of mine gave me a book to read on my honeymoon. It's right back here. It's called Fool's Errand. By the way, there's free copies of Fool's Errand in the back. Scott sent them. He sent me a couple hundred of them and told me to pass them out at the state convention. I'm going to have a few extras. That's right. Scott has them in the gross. And I was reading this book. We're laying on the beach in the Dominican Republic. My beautiful brand new bride is sitting next to me. I just tricked her into marrying me. I'm feeling good about life again. I'm reading this Fool's Errand, and if anybody knows anything about the book, or Scott, he's a genius, first of all. And every word he writes is documented, sourced, verified. It's gospel. And he is basically writing and published my subconscious mind of things that I felt about the war and giving me footnotes. And all of a sudden, all the problems I have in my brain, I'm able to put them in boxes. in the right place. And my life just kind of gets back on this narrow focus. And I'm screaming at the book on the beach. And my wife thinks I'm nuts. And I read the entire book in about 3 days. I get home, I don't even know who Scott Horton is. I look him up, I find a phone number, I call him, he answers the phone, and we've been fast friends ever since. And he's the one that encouraged me to use my status as a war veteran to advocate for the things I believe in. So, Joe Evans, who was here just a little bit ago, met him by accident. I called Boise State University, and I said, hey, put me in touch with your college Republican club, your college Democrat club, your political science club. And they gave me the phone numbers for all three, and I called the clubs. And I said, hey, I'm a veteran. I'm thinking about starting this. I didn't even know what it was. This group, and we just want to talk about war powers and the proper way to go to war. And I met a young man named Price Robinson, who was the college Republicans. I met a young man named Joe Goody, who was an intern for Senator John Gannon, Democratic senator in Idaho, who was the college Democrats president. And I met a young Marine, Ben Adams, who is now a state senator here in Idaho. And I met Joe Evans accidentally. So I had those three. I had myself. I thought, let me call some community leaders. And I picked up the phone, and I found an activist in Nampa, Senator Tammy Nichols. She's far right. Tammy Nichols, she's really good on anti-war and some other stuff, really bad on other things. Met her, called her, invited her, and I found a Democrat in Nampa that was running for city council. So I had a Republican legislator, a Democratic candidate for city council, college Republican, college Democrat, and non-political member of the Political Science Club of Boise State. That's the spectrum, right? And we rented a room about this big, Boise Library, and we just put on this event. We put it on Facebook and said, people talking about war, please join us. And we packed the room. I mean, who would have thought in Boise, Idaho, on a Tuesday night, February 5th, 2019, we packed the room. Former Attorney General David Leroy showed up. He was curious. The room was packed, and that's where I met Joe. Joe shows up and just listens to our discussion. We didn't have a mission. We didn't have an agenda. We were just doing something. Because in politics, what's the hardest thing to do in politics? I'm going to demonstrate it. You ready? First step. Everybody has good intentions. 95% of people don't have the ability to start. And we just started. And from that event, we put it on Facebook Live, and a gentleman in Florida saw it and became my angel donor just overnight. Because I want to fund whatever you're doing. And I said, well, I want to take 100 legislators and veterans to Washington, D.C., and we're going to go into the belly of the beast, and we're going to tell our congressman that we demand an end to the war in Afghanistan. He goes, fine, let's do it. So we did it, and we went to Washington, D.C., 100 lawmakers and veterans from around the country, across the political spectrum. I didn't ask a single person what their political belief was, except for one question. Do you want to end the war in Afghanistan? No, I didn't ask if they were anti-war. I didn't care if they were peace activists. I didn't care if they disagreed with it for constitutional purposes or budgetary reasons. Just, do you want to end the war? So we went, and we put on this conference, and I scheduled appointments for every single person to go meet with their member of Congress and their senator, every single one of us. And we went in force, and this was during impeachment, and zero media showed up because there was a bigger thing going on. And President Erdogan from Turkey was in town, and the whole town was sequestered and blocked off, and we couldn't go anywhere. And so no media attention, no nothing. But every single meeting that we scheduled with our congressmen and senators, they were able to take because Congress was shut down, right? They recessed to go back and talk about impeachment, and they were all in their offices. And to a congressman and to the senators, to the person, they all said the same thing. Thank you for coming in. We support the troops. We believe in the military. God bless you. Greatest generation, blah, blah, blah. Took a picture with us so they could show their constituents that they love the troops, but never committed to do anything at all. And the last meeting of the day, I was with a great libertarian from the state of Wyoming, 6'9" crypto cowboy Tyler Lindholm. Some of you may know him. We go in to see his representative. Who's the representative from Wyoming at the time? Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney, the butcher of Bethesda, the heiress of a war profiteer fortune. And we sit down in our office. I'm this far away from it right here. And we plead our case. We want to come home from the war. We've been there for 19 years. You didn't declare war. We're there without the proper authority. What can we do? And under what circumstances will you support bringing the troops home and voting to end the war? And she looked us dead in the eye, and she said, as long as I'm in Washington, D.C., serving in Congress, we will never come home from Afghanistan. Never. We walked out of that meeting dejected and focused. Bloodhound. And we went back home, stayed in touch with all the people that were all dejected and felt like they were just wasting their time. And we said, we can never fight in Washington, D.C. again. It is not a suitable battlefield for our skill set. How can we fight in the states? How can we fight in the states and use the 10th Amendment and use my influence over my state rep who lives next door to me? How can I use that instead of trying to go to Mike Simpson or Russ Fulcher or whoever? And by accident, we met Pat McGeehan, who you see on the video. He's the one standing up in the West Virginia House, and he says, you explained to the son that he had to lose his father because of federal subsidies. That's Pat McGeehan. He is Dr. Pat McGeehan now. He just got his doctorate degree in philosophy. Thomas Aquinas is that's the philosophy he follows, which is the just war theory. Pat McGeehan was in D.C. with us and never even mentioned that he had already written this bill, Defend the Guard. He'd already put it forward 4 times in West Virginia and had never gotten a vote out of a committee, ever. He didn't even mention it to us. And we found it by accident because of this new technology. It's French, Google. And we found it by accident. I called Pat. I'm like, Pat, why didn't you tell me about this? And he goes, oh, I didn't think you guys would be interested in it. And so we adopted it immediately. Our organization is going to become the national sponsor of Defend the Guard, and we're going to push it. We're going to pass it in 50 states next year. You watch. Oops. The machine's strong. So we adopted Defend the Guard. While we were in D.C., this is a part of the story I accidentally skipped over. Fast forward from when Governor Risch helped us, I still had him on this pedestal. My meeting in Washington, D.C. was with now Senator Jim Risch. William Borah, Frank Church, chairman of the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations. Guess what Jim Risch was when we were there? Chairman of the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations. Our third one from Idaho, punching way above our weight class. Go Spuds. And we sat down with Jim Risch, and he knew what we were coming in for. He didn't want to talk about it. And so we sat in his room, in his office, beautiful office, with his wife and 7 of his senior advisors, including 2 generals, and they sat in a circle around us. So I had him behind me, to my left and right flanks, and then he was right in front of me. And he sat in his chair the entire meeting. I have pictures of him like this. Couldn't care less. Slouched in his chair like we were bothering him. And he refused to talk about foreign policy at all. And so we left. And I said, my next goal is to understand how this works. And that's when Defend the Guard was born. Jim Risch came back to Idaho and was speaking at a Chamber of Commerce event. And I grabbed a veteran friend of mine who had a camera. And I said, let's go. Let's corner him. Let's make it hurt a little bit. And I wrote an op-ed. And it got published in 9 newspapers around the state of Idaho. It was really weird. I'm a Marine. I wrote it in crayon because that's how we do it. And I ate the crayon too. And it was published and basically challenging Jim Risch to use his chairmanship to advocate for the end of war. And so he's at the Chamber of Commerce event. We're in front of all the swampy people. IACI was there and all the gross people. And it gets to the question and answer time. And I jump up and Senator Risch, Dan McKnight, you helped me once upon a time back in Afghanistan. Thank you for that. I'm going to ask you for your help again. And he stopped me right there. He goes, no, I remember the situation. I read your op-ed. Dan, I agree. We are done nation building. I'm the chairman of the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations. I'm going to stop this. And I thought, God, politics is really easy. Why don't more people do this? And so he got on the plane, went back to D.C., and 3 times over the next 90 days voted to extend the wars indefinitely in Yemen, Syria, and Iraq. So, Defend the Guard. It's a bill that says that the state legislatures are putting in policy for the state. It takes it out of the governor's hands. That the National Guard, which is the militia of the state, we can argue that back and forth because I don't believe that's actually correct, but that's the way we live in today's world. That the National Guard is the active militia. And the militia, the National Guard, will not be called into federal service for the purpose of fighting overseas wars unless Congress has first declared war as required by the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, enumerated powers. When was the last time Congress declared war?
1948.
Close.
1941, Romania, Bulgaria, and Hungary.
Boom. 1941, so 83 years ago was the last time Congress declared war. But we've been in Vietnam, Korea, Afghanistan, Iraq, Yemen, Gulf War I, Gulf War Taker Wars, the Balkan states, 27 countries in Africa, Niger, Djibouti. You tell the people that have fought and died and bled in those conflicts that they're not in war. So what has happened? Why are we in war without Congress doing their job? What mechanism are we using to send the military and the National Guard into these foreign conflicts? An authorization of use of military force has been used 3 times since 1991. 1991 for Gulf War, 2001 for Afghanistan, 2003 for Iraq. I'm going to skip around on a timeline for a second. Last fall, Congress voted to finally end the AUMF from 1991. They held a vote. Failed. They failed. And the argument was because we still need it. We still need it. The authorization of use of military force from 1991 is how we are fighting in Niger today over cocoa beans. Find me a story on the news about the cocoa bean war. You have to look deep. Responsible Statescraft has a story. If anybody doesn't read Responsible Statescraft, I highly recommend it. The Quincy Institute. If you want to find a good source of good libertarian news, Quincy Institute. So the 2001 authorization of use of military force that was passed so that we could go avenge 9/11 says that we are going to go to war in Afghanistan to kill or capture anybody that attacked us on 9/11. To kill or capture anybody who aided in the attacks or planned the attacks. To hunt down and kill Osama bin Laden. And to destroy the terror training camps. Boots hit the ground on 10/7, October 7th. We had eradicated every terror training camp in Afghanistan and killed every single person confirmed with DNA that attacked or trained or planned the invasion by February 1st of 2002. 2002. So 4 months it took us to complete the mission. But around that time, Baby Bush and Daddy Dick decided they had unfinished business from that 1991 authorization to use military force. And they took their eye off the mission and they marched headlong into war in Iraq and got another authorization to use military force and completely disregarded Afghanistan. In fact, it was so bad that General Sopko, who is the investigating general that is still investigating the way we issued that war in Afghanistan today, he's still doing it, wrote a report called the Afghanistan Papers and said, we did not know what we were doing there. That's not his quote, though. That came from the commanding generals from CENTCOM, 4-star generals that said in private conversations with him, private interviews, we didn't know what we were doing. George W. Bush said in 2004, in an interview with General Sopko, he couldn't even name the commanding general in Afghanistan. Couldn't even name him. He hadn't met with anybody from the Afghanistan war in over a year. So our system's broken. I think everybody, no matter what you think about the military, about war, about veterans, about the social program that's become the VA, no matter what you think about it, we can all admit in our gut level, the system's broken. And so the theory of nullification starts to come in and creep in at this point. And I think if you're at your state convention for the Libertarian Party, you understand very clearly what nullification is, right? Who's got a really good definition of nullification?
Nullification is when a local government refuses to implement an unjust policy of a federal government.
Wonderful.
Well, and furthermore, sometimes even criminalizes its officials enforcing those policies of that larger government.
Yeah, that's nullification with a lowercase n. That's capitalized with an exclamation point. All right? Both are effective. What are some examples of nullification in Idaho?
There is a law about firearms and firearm accessories produced within the state of Idaho and sold within the state of Idaho, but they're not subject to federal firearm.
If we made bump stocks in Idaho, we could have bump stocks.
Yeah.
Right? What's a great nullification bill that is 45 miles to our west?
Oh, yeah.
Cannabis, right? Federal government, it's still illegal, right? It's still Schedule 1, right? So first offense is felony. It's crazy. So there is this precedence of nullification. And so we thought, let's use nullification as our model. Let's use confrontational politics as our tool. And let's just start taking people's heads off if they're wrong, right? You have to tie legislative season at the Capitol building to election season, and people either are rewarded or they're punished for their votes. And so we developed this plan. We went to a bunch of different political schools and just learned and took notes and just tried to develop. We came up with we teach a school called the Political Leadership School. We've taught it in, probably 30 states already. And you put 30 people in a room and we will fly out there at no cost to you and teach you how to be effective in politics. And it's called the confrontational model, but not for the sake of being confrontational, right? Confrontation is not a tone, right? Confrontation is holding people accountable. And so we do that everywhere. And our best success story that I love to tell is Tucson, Arizona, Pima County, which is maybe the bluest and craziest county of just wildly progressive politics in Arizona. We have taken both representative seats, the state Senate seat, the Board of Commissioners, the City Council, 3 school boards in 2 years, stripped it away from them. And in the last election, full disclosure, I am as libertarian as they come, but to be effective in Idaho, I'm a Republican. Please forgive me, absolve me of my sins. I hate the Republican Party as much as I hate the Democratic Party, and I'll say it if there's a camera, I'll say it right to you. There it is. I hate the Republican Party.
As much as?
Yes, yeah, because they will stab you in your back and pat you at the same time, right? The Republicans are more dangerous because when there's a uniparty, they can do more damage, right? And so anyway, we've taken all those seats in Pima County, and every time we go down there, we pack a building, 150, 200 people, and we train them how to be effective. All right, I want to talk real quick, get back to Defend the Guard and what the Libertarian Party has been doing. Last year, Angela McCardle at the National Convention made a motion to accept Defend the Guard as an official plank of the Libertarian Party's national platform. Freaking awesome, right? Fantastic. I was in California at the LP State Convention 3 weeks ago, and all candidates for president were there, I think, except for Chase. I think he was the only one that was missing. And all of them verbally adopted Defend the Guard into their platform at some level, except for the one Libertarian presidential candidate that wasn't there. He softly endorsed it, RFK. Weird. Didn't the Democrats used to be the anti-war party? What happened to them? Is anybody in this room, is anybody a veteran in here? What branch?
Maybe.
Thank you. We appreciate the ride. Yeah. Anybody else? No? Have you ever been called
Nominated delegates is too.
Okay, got it. Joe. Joe was a veteran, right? Okay.
National Guard and Army and the
Gotcha. Okay. Your libertarian views and being a veteran, those things kind of clash at times, because is there anything more establishment than being in the military?
Who would know better?
Right.
Like I say.
Yeah, right.
The waste.
Oh, the fraud, waste, and abuse, right? How about anybody else in this room? Because of your libertarian leanings, have you ever been called a traitor to society or outcast or dirty libertarian in your druggy friends? All the time, right? Does it even hurt anymore? All right, so the confrontational model is built for us. We now understand that words don't hurt. They're just words. In fact, I stood up on the House floor in Idaho last week. I got to fill in for my representative who was sick, and they were debating the use of the word invasion on the border. It's offensive. It's turning people into criminals. I'm like, no. It's a word. Invasion means entry plus enmity. You're here and you didn't have permission, which means you broke the law. That's all it means. If we can't use words, then the fight's bigger than we think it is. So we use words, and we don't get offended when they use them against us. All right? So that's rule number one. When our enemies attack us, it's because we're right? And when our enemies attack us, it's because we're Americans and we're not ashamed of it, right? This is going to get me in trouble. I don't participate in the Pledge of Allegiance because it's missing some words. I don't pledge allegiance to a piece of cloth, right? Unless you consider the scrolls that the Constitution is written on as cloth, but that's not what the pledge says. I do say the Pledge of Allegiance, and in my head, I add the words to the nation that it represents and to the Constitution that is built on. I am a constitutional purist, and I know that's not always in perfect line with the Libertarian Party, but it's our rules. So let's play by the goddamn rules.
What do you think about indivisible?
Oh, boy. Again, I have some issues. Sidebar. I was at the Republican convention 2 summers ago, and they put forth a resolution that says the Republican Party and the state of Idaho supports Israel now and forever, unequivocally. Did I say that word right? Unequivocally. Forever, for any reason, without question, there's no discussion. It passed 742 to 1.
Who's the one?
What if Israel started committing genocide? Would we support them then? What if they started killing their own children? Would we support them then? I'm sorry, again, I believe in a principle, and that principle is enshrined in our Constitution. All right, let's see here. Being a veteran and being anti-war is a tough field to navigate. We sign up knowing that our job is to prosecute war. It's our job. And then to be openly in resistance of that, you do at times feel like a traitor. But ask any veteran after 9/11, should we have gone and gone to war to avenge what happened? Probably 100% would say yes. It's a tough debate to have. Now that we have the gift of hindsight, we know that that was a mistake. We know that we went the wrong place. Not a single person that attacked us was in Afghanistan. They're not from Afghanistan. They were all from Saudi Arabia.
Egypt.
Right? 2 from Egypt. We weren't going to Saudi Arabia to fight a war. So being anti-war and being a veteran is a tough place. It's lonely. It's a lot of sleepless nights. And because you don't want to ever say anything that's going to put your brothers that are deployed right now currently in danger. And sometimes when you take an anti-war position, it creates uncertainty in the ranks. If you believe the hype, if you believe the narrative that's shoved down our throats. We in our country believe in a civilian-controlled military for a reason. Wise and prudent control to put the brakes on before we go marching into headlong into war at the whim of the executive branch, because the executive is most interested in war and most prone to it. So civilians have to have some control. And our brilliant, beautiful form of government that's got checks and balances is built that way. It's built for us to be able to say no to the executive. The problem is 82% of the representatives and senators that signed that 2001 authorization of use of military force, they're not even in Congress anymore. It's never been revisited. They've never looked at it again. So it's not.
They didn't look at it originally.
They didn't even look at it originally, apparently. That's a fact. And so it's a lonely place to be. But you ask any veteran if we should have gone to fight after 9/11, they would say yes. But you ask any veteran again, or a member of the National Guard from Kansas or Illinois or California, if they want peace now that they've been there, they'll all say yes. Right? Once you've seen the atrocities of war and you've felt that and you've tried to reconcile it at the end of the day, you cannot be a pro-war person. Oh, I'm skipping through some bunch of stuff that's really boring stuff. It's down in the weeds. All right. Why is this constitutional? What's our foundational basis for this? Does anybody know Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15 of the Constitution? I'm going to get a little bit weedy right down the weeds for a second. Article 1,
powers, but
8 is enumerated powers. 15 is the militia clause, right? And remember I said earlier the National Guard has been codified and is now referred to as the active militia. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15 says that the militia of the states, National Guard, can be called into federal service for 3 purposes. Does anybody know what those purposes are?
Put down insurrection.
Put down an insurrection.
repel invasion.
Repel an invasion.
Enforce the laws of the Union.
Enforce the laws of the Union. What's missing from there?
Invade the Middle East.
Invading the Middle East and the cocoa bean wars of Niger. So the military-industrial complex which is missing a word, the Congressional Military Industrial Complex, insists that if we pass this bill in Idaho, then Idaho will never be able to defend America overseas. I accept your premise. I accept your rules. It's not true though. Because what happens when Congress formally debates and votes for a declaration of war? It's sent in resolution form to the president, and the president does what? He signs it or vetoes it, becoming what? The law of the Union. Now the National Guard can be activated into federal service to go and prosecute that war. That's the authorization that the National Guard needs to be able to be pulled from the state. In 2005, right before I went to Afghanistan, I got a call at 4 a.m, and I had to lead a convoy from Idaho to Hattiesburg, Mississippi. It was September 20th, 2005. I think that's the right date. Does anybody remember what happened in that time?
I don't remember what happened yesterday.
Hurricane Katrina. The state of Idaho and every other state in the union, plus coincidentally enough, Puerto Rico, Guam, and Washington, D.C., all sent National Guard troops to Louisiana and Mississippi. Why?
To save Fats Domino.
To save, that might be the greatest reference. Oh. Yes, to save.
I learned recently that Fats Domino was feared missing, and then later they did a special report to reveal that he actually was still alive.
Yes. We went there. Why did we go there though?
Take guns away from people.
Say it again.
Take guns away from people to enforce martial law, not actually help anyone.
We actually went there to instill martial law.
And then when the Cajun Navy tried to pop up and help people, they actually barred them from
Yep.
going.
Took away their what are they called?
Yeah,
What are they called?
airboats and John boats and.
They've got a name for them. I can't remember what it. The little boats are. Anyway,
John boats.
dinghy. No. Anyway,
Make sure nobody was price gouged in the bottled water.
Yeah.
we went there because mostly the reason that we had to go there was because the Louisiana National Guard was in Iraq. They are a civil engineer brigade in Louisiana. Their job is to build levees and bridges and roads and dams, and they're damn good at it. And they were in Iraq doing it. They were building roads and levees and bridges and dams when their home state was being flooded and Lake Pontchartrain overran the levee. And so we all had to go to the rescue. Not a single engineer brigade ended up in Hattiesburg, Mississippi or Louisiana. We all delivered supplies, then we stood around and looked at each other. We didn't know what to do. There was no command control structure. Believe it or not, the Mormon church took control and started issuing orders to the military because there was no one, and the Mormons were there 4 days ahead of us. So again, that's the market solving the problem. We believe in that. It was crazy. It was unbelievable. So we turned around, we left, and we drove straight to Fort Hood, dropped our equipment off in Fort Hood, got on a plane, flew back to Idaho, packed my bags, and 2 days later, went back to Fort Hood to deploy to Afghanistan. 2000 and, see, what year is it now? 24. 22. Remember the wildfires right across our border in Oregon, the big, where the sky was orange, the whole state was on fire, the Redland fire in California was happening. The California and Oregon National Guard have heavy lift helicopters, Chinooks, and they were fighting those fires in their communities. In the middle, it was actually, I'm sorry, it wasn't 2002, it was 2020, it was COVID. In the middle of fighting the fires, with the fire a whopping 3% contained, I don't know how they do that math, but it was 3% contained. They took the Chinooks and the pilots and the crews off the fires and sent them to Afghanistan. In the middle of the fires. And those crews sat in tents in Afghanistan in quarantine. They didn't even fight. They weren't doing military missions. They were in quarantine. Remember the big freeze in Texas? Texas National Guard was gone. Power lines are down. Law and order out the door. That's the last thing you want is a bunch of Texans with their guns running around with no one there to hit the brakes. I can give you 1,000 examples of when the National Guard was absent. We were in Djibouti, Africa. 15 states had their National Guards in Djibouti, Africa, issuing shots and COVID vaccines to all across the African continent when their states were at home struggling. When the war in Ukraine kicked off, and I don't want to debate the war in Ukraine, it's a sensitive topic, for the record, I guess. The Florida National Guard was in Ukraine on the front lines engaging with Russia. The Florida National Guard. We don't even have an AUMF there. They're not even they're not even an ally by treaty, right?
Not even a real country.
It's ethnically Russian, right? I don't want to debate those merits. That's a tough discussion to have. But the National Guard has been being used incorrectly. And this is why Defend the Guard is so important. If we ever want to put a stake through the heart of the establishment and the military-industrial complex and the way that we've gone down this dangerous tangent that does not include liberty or constitutional measures or any principles whatsoever, we have to do something to make it stop. The Korean War, the Lebanon crisis, the Vietnam War, Bay of Pigs, the Dominican Civil War, the Korean DMZ, Lebanon again, Grenada, Libya, Persian Gulf tanker wars, Panama, Gulf War, Iraq no-fly zone, Somalia, Bosnia, Croatia, Herzegovina, Haiti, Kosovo, Afghanistan, Yemen, Iraq again, Northwest Pakistan, Somali Civil War again, Operation Ocean Shield, Libya again, Uganda, Iraq 3, Syria, Libya, Djibouti, Africa, Kenya. There's 30 examples of where the National Guard has been or is currently fighting in active war. This is what makes this so powerful. The National Guard makes up a percentage of the Department of Defense's total force structure. Does anybody have any idea what that number is? What percentage?
40% or something.
13, 40,
50.
50? 48. 48% of the total force structure of the United States military is the militias of the state. If we take away that piece from the battlefield and don't allow it to return until Congress has done their job, is that leverage? Hell yeah, it's leverage. Now let's multiply that lever. Instead of going to Washington, D.C. and fighting with all the people that occupy the glass and steel buildings around the Capitol Mall, which are all the defense contractors, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, all of the evil ones, is our leverage there strongest, or is it here in Eagle, Idaho, where you run into your representative at the grocery store, where your kids might go to the same school, where you might worship at the same church, where 4,000 votes is the total that they get to put them into office? Where's our lever the most influential? Right here. I believe in a concept called lift where you stand. If I had to pick up 100-pound boxes on that table and I'm standing here, am I going to be able to do it? Never. Right? If it's right here, I can pick it up. Maybe not now, I'm old. In 30 states, we have this bill moving forward in 5 years. 30 states. It has been a tough road to hoe. That's a farm reference. It's not a societal reference on loose morals. Last year, we passed the Arizona State Senate for the first legislative body to ever pass it. Took us 4 years. And we passed it with a lieutenant colonel female pilot as our primary sponsor. And she whipped 16 Republicans in the Senate, 12 of which were veterans, from colonel down to staff sergeant, whipped them to comply and vote for it. And then it went to the House, and the Speaker of the House, Ben Toma, whose scalp I will have the next time we see each other. I will have his scalp. He's killed the bill 2 years in a row. It passed again in the Senate this year. He kills it. This year, he killed it in a dirty, dirty way. He got another representative in the House, who's a good man. He just was inexperienced, to propose Defend the Guard in a House version, so the two bills were traveling at the same time, so they're two competing bills. When the Senate bill passes and goes to transmittal, they don't have to answer that bill until they've disposed of the other one. And so on Friday, he calls Representative Cullinan and says, hey, congratulations, we're going to hear your bill. Can you be in here Monday at 8:30? Guess how many people we could round up by 8:30? We didn't even know until Sunday night at 11 p.m. So he goes into the hearing thinking he's going to have veterans there to support him. He stands up. It's just him and the adjutant general, a 2-star general. Didn't go well. So they killed that bill, which effectively killed the Senate bill. Politics is dirty. In New Hampshire, the largest legislative body, the home of the Free State Project, the greatest libertarian society in America. I'm being a little facetious. I'm using their talking points. They passed it through the largest legislative body in the Western world, right? I think they have 360 representatives in their House of Representatives, and it passed. It took us 4 years there. The first year we had a sponsor that showed up and didn't tell anybody we had a hearing, and then went to the committee hearing and he's like, gosh, this is going to cost us money and I really don't want to, you can just vote it down. And they did. So we go out and we recruit champions. We have proven that the confrontational model works because when we find somebody in office, and this is the part where sometimes libertarians, we have to put the L aside, just like I have to put the R aside, or the Democrats put the D aside. You have to put it aside because there's things that we can't do inside that hallowed building down there made of marble and gold and bronze and copper. There's things that we can't do. We can't file a bill. We can't make a motion, right? We can't debate. So we have to have a puppet to do it for us. I mean, a champion, sorry. Gotta be careful. So we recruit champions. We find people like Ben Adams, who had just gotten out of the Marine Corps, 28 years old, was still dealing with some of his own PTSD issues, and we propped him up. And we said, if you'll run for office and you'll support Defend the Guard, I will knock every door in your district. And he was in a four-way race in the primary, 4 Republicans. One of them, whose brother is the CEO of Priceline.com, had more money than God to run his campaign. He had 4x8 signs in every business up and down 12th Avenue in Napa. Every one of them. He was well known. He'd been involved in party politics. He was the anointed one. He was it. The other one was a city councilman, and the other one was active in the party as a PC, and Ben was a nobody. A nobody. In a 4-way race, with our support, using our model, Ben won 42% of the vote in a 4-way race and won. Stake to the heart. Ugh, take that, Kim Keller. He was the guy with all the money. So now Ben is in there, and he's feeling 10 feet tall and bulletproof because he's got boys to help him. He's got our support. He goes forward as a freshman and presents the bill. He goes to the Transportation and Defense Committee in the House, chaired by Representative Joe Palmer, average Joe, the guy that fights for the common man. Puts the bill before his committee, and Joe calls Ben into his office and says, hey, why don't you come talk to me about this bill? What's the first thing that a politician tries to do to a constituent? First, they try to ignore you. Then they try to pacify you. And then they try to bribe you. And then they try to negotiate. And then they try to defame you and destroy you. And if you keep going the next step, this is where the power comes in. Then they do what you want. If you've survived all that, they will do what you want. But you have to make it hurt. So Ben calls me. He's like, Dan, we have to go see Chairman Palmer. He wants to talk about the bill. I said, record it. Single party state, right? Record it. We go into his office, Ben and I, and Joe says, guys, here's what we're going to do. This bill's awesome. This bill's fantastic. I love it, but it's never going to pass because, gosh, you guys just don't know how it works. I'm going to take this bill and I'm going to change it from a bill and turn it into a resolution, and it'll pass my committee unanimously. It'll pass the House of Representatives unanimously. You'll get your resolution. You'll be able to make the statement that you want. We were naive a little bit. I go, Joe, if that's a resolution and you put it forward, when do you have to file a run for office in Idaho? March. During legislative session, right? So it ended this year on March 15th this year. But it's during legislative session. So I'm in his office. I said, you put forward that resolution. I live in your district. You will not like who files to run against you on Monday at the Secretary of State's office. He stood up and he puts his hands on the desk. Are you threatening me? Yes. I'm a Marine, remember? I stood right up and I put my hands nose to nose. I said, you're goddamn right. You will do your job. He sat down. Confrontation is not a tone, right? It's not principle. Joe took the bill to the committee for a hearing, and Joe Evans was there that day. I believe you were there that day. Yeah. We present the bill. This is one of my first major mistakes that is ingrained in my soul. I forgot to tell Ben that when he presents the bill, he has to do something first. He has to ask for a roll call vote. That's where they go down the road and they say, Representative Palmer, and he says aye or nay, and it's recorded individually. I forgot that. We debate it. There's 17 members of the committee, and we have it on video. We've had the video analyzed, and we've had the audio dissected. 11 representatives voted aye. I'm not good at math. I'm a Marine. Is 11 more than half of 17?
I think so.
It sure is. Palmer picks up his gavel. Measure fails. Boom, gavels and gets up and walks out of the room. Alana Rubel says, Mr. Chairman, roll call vote. She's a principal Democrat. I don't see eye to eye with her on a bunch of stuff, but she is solid when it comes to procedure. He's like, no, I already gavelled, walked out the door. It's taken us 3 years to get from that point to where we were at the other day. We're back in this committee again. We just passed the Senate with Defend the Guard. Ben is now a senator, and he pushed it through the Senate. 27-8 in the Senate. That's bipartisan and lopsided. It goes to the House, and this is where the story gets really gross. Held in committee. Held in committee until the establishment had something that they wanted that they needed to trade. You guys have heard of the Roundup bill, right? Monsanto? Monsanto's getting their pantsuit off them because they're killing people with Roundup. It's causing cancer. Personally, as a free market capitalist / anarcho-capitalist, I think that the market should solve that problem, but the government wanted to solve it for them. They wanted to limit liability for Monsanto so they can continue to make their product, and the sugar beet farmers and the potato farmers and the mines in Idaho could still use Roundup, and the people that were injured by it couldn't sue or would be limited. It died twice, the bill twice. So the third time they wanted to come through, they flew their head attorney over from Germany, and they identified 2 senators that had something that they might be willing to trade. And they called Marine Corps veteran Senator Chris Trakel from Canyon County and Marine Corps veteran Senator Ben Adams from Canyon County into the room and said, you represent agricultural districts. This bill is going to devastate your districts if it doesn't pass. What do you want? This is the real nature of politics. What do you want? The right answer, in case you're ever in this situation yourself, is to be left alone, adherence to the Constitution, end world hunger. These are things you want. Ben and Chris said, you get Defend the Guard across the governor's desk. Signed. And then we'll support Monsanto. Cool, let's do that. Let's go talk to the governor right now. A lobbyist, an attorney, has free access to the governor's office, takes 2 senators in there, and Governor Little, bless his Idaho heart. Ben, Chris, tell me the deal. What's it going to take? And Ben tells him the deal. Defend the Guard's 3 steps away from becoming law. Monsanto version 3 is 8 steps away. Committee hearings, floor votes, transmittal, blah, blah, blah. Ben says, you sign Defend the Guard, and we move 1 for 1. We move a step, you move a step. We are tied to the hip. We're going to do that, Ben. Let's make it happen. Make it happen. Ben called me. He goes, we just sold our soul. I go, no, we're not. We're not selling our soul because we're not going to let it happen because they will never honor the terms of the deal. We are going to shine the disinfecting spotlight on this thing and show the world how dirty and corrupt the system is. We're going to strike a blow at the heart of the beast. Sure enough, they schedule a hearing for Defend the Guard the next Monday at 5:01 p.m. after the agenda's already been published. Thinking we wouldn't see it. But we have little birdies everywhere. And so we start rallying the troops. Libertarian Party does a good job. Jason did a really good job of putting out the message that this was happening, that we needed to have a hearing and pack the room. And I walk in there knowing that the bill is dead. I know it's dead. We're dead men walking because we will not trade our soul for what they want. We walk in the room. One half of the room where Joe is sitting and I'm sitting and Ben and everybody are lower enlisted men and women, spouses of veterans who have died or committed suicide, long-haired, bearded people that are affected and have paid the cost of war, the human cost. On the other side, generals and colonels, career bureaucrats, and union thugs. That's who was that. Am I exaggerating at all?
No, not at all. There was so much freaking brass in that room, so many freaking thieves and garbage and just trash.
And they stood up person for person and said, we'll lose money, we'll lose jobs, we'll lose hard-fought benefits if this bill passes. We stood up and said, if we have to go to war again, we're going to lose more lives. We're losing our soul. We're losing principles. We're losing the Constitution. We're losing our country. Not one member of the committee, which we had whipped. We knew we had committee support about 14-3, maybe 13-4. We weren't sure. We thought there was one that was going to swing, but we thought we had a super majority in conference. Verbal commitments. People that have signed my pledge. Not a single member of that committee voted or asked a question of anybody that testified. Not one. They limited everybody to 2 minutes. And then they said, okay, that's it. We're done. Not a single question was asked. Not one. They happened to have in that room the foremost authority on Defend the Guard in the entire country. That's me. I speak about this 7 days a week. And they wouldn't even ask me a question. I even challenged them. I'm like, guys, ask me a question. I can answer anything you want to know or I will find out. No questions. Joe Palmer, chairman, says, all right, testimony is closed, debate is closed. I guess now is time for a motion. Crickets. What happens when a bill doesn't get a motion in committee? Dies for lack of motion. I lean over to Ben and Sage Dixon, who represents Kootenai County, 20 years, or maybe Boundary County, maybe. Anyway, I look at Sage and I ask Ben, I go, Sage still good? He goes, yeah, Sage is still good. I look at him and I mouth it. And I apologize for my French. I said, make a fucking motion. And he looks down at his desk. And Palmer's about to gavel out. And Sage turns his lights on and he goes, Mr. Chairman, a motion. I move to send the bill to the House floor with no recommendation, good or bad. That's a death knell. It's a killer. But I don't care. Put me on the House floor. Right? We were 43 to 27 was our whip count out there. I'll take that fight. Instantly, a fill-in representative, Ron Crane. Does anybody remember Ron Crane? He used to be the state treasurer. His son, Jaron Crane, and his other son, Brent Crane, represent Nampa in District 12 and 13. And Daddy Crane was filling in for Jaron on the committee. Jaron is also the treasurer for the Idaho Freedom Foundation. Far right. Love our bill. It's a positive score on their scorecard. Ron Crane says, substitute motion. We should return the bill to the committee, which means the committee takes it back and they go away. It's not dead, but it's not advancing. Anybody that's heard this story up to this point, why would they make that motion? Delay, why? Monsanto, right? 1 for 1. They wanted to shorten that timeline to make sure that we didn't screw them. Ron Crane, chairman or treasurer of the Idaho Freedom Foundation, made the motion to kill the bill and play the establishment game. Does anybody know parliamentary procedure? That's a non-debatable motion. Doesn't require a second. Immediately it goes to a vote. 4-13 in favor. 13-4. So they won the motion to take the bill away, and only 4 people of 14 that we had whipped had the balls to still stick with their vote. And when we asked each one of them, they all said the same thing. We were told to delay the bill. But what we saw in the committee, we couldn't. We could not do it. You were so compelling, your efforts, your comments, your testimony, the people, the 15,000 phone calls that we put into their committee, into their districts, with the help of the Idaho Libertarian Party. Activism, grassroots, confrontational politics, 15,000 phone calls. It was so bad, when I was filling in on the floor, all I kept hearing was these grumblings as the pages would come in from the offices and deliver phone messages during the floor sessions. Hundreds of messages being delivered on the floor. Finally, they passed out a memo, how to turn off your voicemail on your Capitol phone. And then when they turned it off, they didn't realize that now the phone would just ring and it wouldn't stop. So then they passed out another memo. Never mind, how to turn it back on. We filled every member of the committee's voicemail, every one of them, every day for a week. Activism, right? Grassroots, that first step. And if anybody's ever phone banked before, it's not fun. So how long did it take you to call 5 times?
I call for a living, I don't remember. I know people for a living.
So if you made 17 calls.
If you roll like 20 to 30 minutes tops. 20
20
to 30 minutes tops, and just go in there, tell them you support it.
They don't even ask you a question.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. You say, I support the bill, they log it, and then they move on.
Yeah, just roll down the list and just keep going.
Yep. At the end of the day, though, their secretaries are supposed to take call sheets and say, hey, you had 1,000 calls about SB 1252. 999 were in favor, 1 was opposed, but she didn't leave her name, right? 15,000. We put 11,400 petition signatures into the committee members in a week. When you sign one of my petitions, it goes to every member of the committee. It's addressed to every member of the committee, but I get it and I segment it. Instead of 1 petition signature, that's 17. So I print 1 out for each member, right? I'm here to multiply my efforts, right? So 15,000 phone calls, 11,400 petition signatures. We are now exposing corruption of the Ron Crane, the establishment, and that whole mess. Our bill is still alive as of today. It's still alive. Monsanto's going to the floor in the Senate tomorrow with strict instructions from me to take its head off. I refuse to trade my principles for a handful of magic Monsanto beans. All right, I'm getting close to the end here. What happens now? What do we have to do? What the confrontational model demands payment. What do you guys think the next step is?
Double down.
Who said that? Have you been to my class?
I've been to the Gallup training.
Same one, yeah. We just modified it, yep. Double down. When you are facing adversity, you have 2 choices. Turn and run, which is what they expect you to do, which is what most do, or double down. And you always have to have the double down ready before you need it. So while you're in your mission planning, while you're advocating for your thing, you always have to be looking for it. You have to have leadership, vision, planning. These are things that have to be ready. So the double down is we are ready now to go remove 3 members from that committee. We've already identified them as who had primary opponents, who was weak, who was favorable districts. Where do we have assets already moved to? And we've got 3 that we are going to remove from that committee. I hope it was somebody in this room did it. Somebody emailed Representative Greg Lanting, who sits on that committee, and said, I'm really sad that you didn't vote for this bill. Why? I heard the testimony. I've read the Constitution. Why didn't you support it? He actually responded. What an idiot. He responded, I didn't want to vote for this bill because Idaho would be the first and they might make an example out of us and we won't get the F-16 package for Gowan Field. When did the F-16 come into production? Does anybody know?
45 years old.
It's a 45-year-old airframe. He's upset and scared that we're going to lose a Cold War era relic so that we can have a social flying club at Gowan Field at the price of our students' lives. Our sons and daughters' lives. And he put it in writing. What do you think we did with that? Oh, man. I had his opponent the next day. His name's Dave Levitt. Fantastic libertarian, by the way, from Twin Falls. In my office in Meridian, I have a brand new podcast studio, and we sat down and I interviewed him for 2 hours. I fed him all the material he could possibly need to bury Greg Lanting. I'm going to wear that man's skin as a suit. And he is large enough that I'll probably get a top hat out of it too. I'm going to look like a disgusting gross Mr. Peanut, right? So we're taking Greg Lanting, and he is an establishment darling. They love him. He does whatever the governor says.
That's a lot worse than bloodbath.
Bloodbath. I can't even go there. On the committee is also Megan Blanksma. We call her the handmaid of the house. She's the one that orchestrated the bill to be returned to committee. She works for the governor. She's very much establishment. Joy, and I can't remember her last name now, lives in McCall. Megan Blanksma lives in Elmore County. Joy, the Republican district chairman, lives in McCall. It's the same district. That's weird, right? McCall, Elmore County, same district. We had already done the analysis on this and recognized that Valley County has 56% of the voters in the entire district. They're separated by 200 miles. We already have the numbers. So guess what we did on Thursday last week? We deployed door knockers to Valley County. 2 heads. The third one is going to be the fun one. This is Baby Crane, Jaron Crane. Because Daddy was there and Daddy voted poorly, Daddy's got to go from IFF and Baby Crane's got to go from District 13. So we're going to remove 3 people. Is that enough to flip 14-3? Let's do the math real quick. That takes it down to 11-6. We're still losing. But what do, I don't know, 50% of politicians do when they're scared? What you want them to do? They have to, right? You have to make them fear you and respect you, because politicians speak two languages: pain and pleasure. All right, so if you're ready to enlist in the movement and work on Defend the Guard and learn how to do this effectively for your issues, I teach our school for all liberty issues. When you come to the school, you will learn it in the Defend the Guard model and the mindset. We use our bill as our examples, but you can apply it to anything with a solemn blood oath that if you use it for anything that is not based in liberty, I will find you. I will wear you as a skin suit, right? And I will make an example, and I will run around to all liberty factions and say, I did this. I destroyed somebody that violated our rules, and use ours for something that's not liberty-based. My issue is I'm single-focused. I don't get involved in any other issues at all as the chairman of my organization. It's Defend the Guard, restoration of war powers, and nothing less. I get asked all the time to come and help on school choice. Not my fight. Not my fight. I'm in the game of addition, right? I have to add people to my side. So if I choose an issue that's controversial, something else, half of the people that could possibly be my allies are now gone. I stay single focused. This is the problem with modern politics. Every hill is the one you want to die on. So my message to the Libertarian Party of Idaho, just like it was in California, whatever your number one issue is, make it your only issue. You do not have 6,000 people in this room. You have 11. But guess what? If I have 11 activists that are willing to do just a little bit of work, take that first step, I will change the world. I'll do it in your district first. 11 activists. Most establishment politicians running for re-election, guess how many volunteers they have on their campaigns?
3, 4, maybe.
Maybe, if they're married and have an adult child. Maybe. Most of them have 0. Most of them have 0. So getting people out to knock on doors, recruiting people to do it. I don't want someone to do this full time. Gross. You never want an activist to have to change their life to do it. But if you can give me an hour on a Saturday during election season, or an hour every Saturday in election season, or an hour every Saturday during election season plus 30 minutes during the week, you will do more than 99.5% of the rest of the population when it comes to political activism. All right? So don't be a part of the debate club. Don't be on social media. Don't be the grandmas for Trump that sit on the overpass and wave flags. They've never convinced a single person to vote. And by God, please, 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 do not waste your time during the election season registering people to vote. Can I tell you why? You guys are all looking at me. They don't care, right? They don't vote and they're not registered because they don't care. And if they do register, are they going to vote your way? Don't know. Why? Because they don't care, right? They sign up at the fairgrounds because somebody put a clipboard in front of them. If they're not registered, don't worry about them. We play in a world, a universe of 3%. 3% of the electorate is all I ever focus on. Half are going to vote Republican, half are going to vote Democrat. 6% are going to vote for some third, fourth, fifth, sixth party. 3% are in play. And once you learn how to identify those 3%, I don't need 4,000 votes in a legislative district anymore. Quickly do the math. What's 6% of 4,000?
120.
120 votes. I need to move 120 plus 1 to win any race in Idaho. It's how you focus on those 120. Politics is possible. Grassroots is possible. Change is possible. But only if you take that first step. Only if you make yourself a single issue this year. Single issue. Pass your issue. Make your mark. And then move on to the next one. We can't fight for decriminalization of marijuana and for health medical freedom at the same time. They're two different ally groups. Both are important. You can't fight for constitutional carry, right? And school safety, even though I think they're the same issue. You'll never get the teachers union or the parents or the PTA or any of them to agree that maybe teachers should carry protection. You'll never get them to agree. So don't convolute the issue. Laser focus, single heart, single mission, and find yourself an army of 11. 11 people. In closing, I want to leave you with some incredible optimism. Our national effort for Defend the Guard was growing rapidly. But it did not hit the stratosphere until, and I'm gonna apologize to the classical liberals in the room. I understand the division between the classical liberals and the Mises caucus in your party. I understand it. So if you're on one side or the other, bless your hearts. It's not the fight today. Today's not the fight. Today's what can the Libertarian Party do to be effective. Once the Libertarian Party, both the Mises caucus and the classical liberals, decided to join Diego Rivera, my field director, and make 30 minutes of phone calls twice a week, we started moving mountains. Mountains. And I'm not talking about thousands of people from the LP. Have you phone banked with Diego?
It was about 50.
50 people, right? 50 people from across the country.
Just a handful, and that was just MC. I don't know the other people.
That's just the Mises caucus, right?
That's just MC. About Amy Lepore is the one who we.
Maryland, she's fantastic.
Yeah, Amy Lepore fucking rocks. And she told us it was about 50, at least around the time of Arizona.
And
I don't know if it's more now.
And we're not even using good technology yet. We're using Google phone or Google numbers, and you get yourself a Google number in the area code of where the representative lives, and then you just call with that number until you've called everybody that you need to call, and then you change your Google number. I've actually just invested in better software. We're now going to be doing patch-through calling. So we've got an automated system that's going to call registered voters and say, hey, your representative, Greg Lanting, doesn't support the National Guard and he's voting in opposition to the Constitution. Press 1 and we will put you in touch with him and tell him that you want him to change his vote. We will be doing that on the backside of it, right? And then we've got predictive dialers that are going to help the active live people do the phone calls. So we're growing. We're doing the best that we can to put the best technology in front of the activists. All right, now call to action. I'd be remiss if I didn't do a call to action. On your phones, on your laptops, wherever you're at, if you go to defendtheguard.us, defendtheguard.us, and if you click on the state of Idaho when you get there, on the map, it'll take you to a place that has two really, really gross looking ogres, Ben Adams and Ted Hill. By the way, Ted Hill, 38-year naval aviator, he's our sponsor, rose to the rank of captain in the Navy, which is the same as a colonel in the Army. His role in the Navy as an aviator was what the guy Jester in Top Gun was based on. He was a career Op-4 pilot, opposition force. He trains the military on how to fight the Chinese or how to fight the Ukrainians or the Russians or whoever. He's that guy. Only made it to the rank of captain in the Navy because he refused to take that second oath that they proposed a few years ago, the woke oath. He told the admirals, pound sand, I've already taken my oath. And they said, you'll never get a star on your collar. Okay, whatever. If you go to that page, go to defendtheguard.us, sorry. So just so everybody knows, Bring Our Troops Home is the organization. Defend the Guard is the legislative effort. Eventually these will all be merged into one, but again, I eat crayons for breakfast. I didn't realize what I was doing by creating two different paths. So defendtheguard.us.
Or Defend the Guard.
Yep.
Okay, right here.
Oh, there you go. And then if you go to, click on the logo right there. I'll take you to the home and click on Idaho. We do this all, that's Nevada.
It jumped.
Yep.
I also eat crayons.
All right, Ben Adams, Ted Hill, scroll down a little bit. Scroll down a little bit. Right here. This right here, this form, this is a petition. Every single person that signed this petition, I print them out. I deliver them to the intended body. If it's to the Transportation and Defense Committee, I will deliver your petition. We make a big show of it. Does anybody know who Eric Brakey is? He's a former state senator in Maine. He just delivered a stack of petitions so big he couldn't carry it for, I don't even remember what the issue was.
He's in New Hampshire now, right?
He's in New Hampshire in the Free State Project. I can't remember what the issue was, but do you think a stack of petitions being walked into the Capitol building has any effect? It's kind of a gimmick, right? But does it have an effect? A little bit. What's even better is he has them broken up by person. So he walks into the office, sets them down on the receptionist's desk, and he grabs the first packet and he goes, "Where is Senator Adams' office?" He knows where it's at, right? And then they walk him back to Senator Adams' office, and he walks in there and he takes the clip off and he goes, "Nancy Smith, Bob Jones." And he goes until they finally stop and they're like, "Okay, I understand." And he has a tally. He goes, "There's 1,350 petition signatures from your district. They want you to vote." This runs 24/7, automated. We don't have to do anything with it except put it on social media. So if you would sign the petition, I will deliver your petitions. If you talk to anybody about Defend the Guard and you in any state, they can do the same thing. We then take this list of petition signers, and once in a while, when we need people to testify, we break our list down by Idaho. We find who has signed it, and we ask them a question: would you be interested in testifying for Defend the Guard? And are you willing to help with grassroots activist work? If they say yes to those questions, they're my new best friend, right? Because having the same 7 veterans show up to testify, it's a little old. And 7 testifying is good, 70 is better, right? So this is how we build our army. My organization, you guys are looking at me like, we can't do this. Guess how many full-time people I have working for this organization? 2. I have a job. I own 3 businesses. I do this for fun. I have a guy named Diego Rivera in Austin, Texas, and I have Hunter Durenzis, who's my communications director. So if you see anything in writing from me, it's been written by Hunter. He's my autistic typewriter. That's all I can afford. That's it. And the 3 of us, the 2 of them primarily, the 3 of us look like a 500-headed monster. And it's a lot of fun. So with that, I want to thank Jason so much for having me here. I want to shake your hand. I want to give you this. Who's got a camera?
So we have something for you.
Oh, I'm not done yet. Hold on.
Oh.
Yeah, this is for you. Defend the Guard. It means something to us. We don't give these out very often. Joe got one for testifying, but I don't give them to anybody. But they are available on the back table. But in true libertarian form, I won't tell you how much they cost. Whatever the market decides. So if you think it's $1, I'll take $1. If you think it's $100, I'll take $100. But it's up to you. We do Venmo. We unfortunately do fiat currency because it's still real. And I will always accept ammunition, gold, and silver. So thank you for having me out.
Thank you for coming.
And then one last thing, anything on that table right there, anything on that table is free for the taking.
Okay. Any
material you need, if you decide you want to be involved, you let us know and we will resupply.
Extend a handshake one more time.
Of course.
So we had a board meeting last night and we have voted to donate $400 to Defend the Guard. I mean, it's pretty clear that we support you 100% in everything you've done. Anything we can do. I mean, we're few, but we're kind of chatty, and we're very dedicated. So anything we can do, I can't formally endorse you, but I wouldn't turn down a motion to do so.
I move to endorse the Defend the Guard initiative. Second.
It's been seconded.
Well,
Is there any objection to the party formally endorsing Defend the Guard?
Passes without objection.
I appreciate you coming across. I know you didn't get very much out of it, but
No, are you kidding? Let me tell you real quick what $400 will do for our organization, because salaries are paid by my angel donor. He pays the 2 guys. $400 pays for airfare. It pays for hotels. It pays for us to go train. It pays for phone banking. It pays for I-360. Every penny we get goes to actual grassroots. Anything that's back on the table that's material, I'll pay from the donor. So you'll never give me $1 that ever goes towards swag. It all goes towards the effort. So thank you. And I will be putting out a press release saying that the Idaho Libertarian Party is endorsed Defend the Guard unanimously. Is that fair?
yes, sir.
Unanimously. All right. Thank you again.
And anytime you want to come speak, maybe next time you can wiggle Scott into coming.
You put 30 people in a room, I'll bring Scott.
Okay, it's a deal.
That's a goal.
Let's go. All right.
Hey,